What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. Back today with another review, and just like that, episode 5, titled Tragically Hip. There is a disclaimer ranting at the end of this video. Opening scene, Seema and Carrie are walking into Carrie's brownstone. She's gonna show her apartment, and as they're walking up the stairs, Carrie decides to grab an umbrella, use it as a crutch, use it as a cane to go up the stairs. So Carrie's going up the stairs with the umbrella. She's like holding her back, she's like grunting, and Seema's like, what are you doing? Like, are you okay? Carrie's like, oh yeah, it's just like my back. Like the internet says I have like old people bone disease. So Seema's like concerned. So Seema gets on the phone, dialing numbers. Carrie's in the background, like, look, heating pad. Seema's like, yeah, no. One of the reasons that Seema's able to get this appointment so quick for Carrie is because it's actually her cousin. So they go to the doctor's office, they get their x-ray. The doctor ends up telling Carrie that she has like a birthing defect, a defect that she's had basically since childbirth in her hip. He's like, don't worry about it. I can like get that taken care of for you with like a little surgical procedure. Within a couple of months, you'll be back to normal. 55 is really, really young. Carrie heads on over to lunch. So it's Charlotte, Miranda, Anthony making jokes, and he's like, hey, I really have to impress you guys because you know this is like my first solo date. Last episode that I reviewed, episode 4, Stanford's exit, it was time because unfortunately Willie did pass away, so we had to write him off. Stanford went to Tokyo and asked for a divorce. So now we're at lunch with the girls. Carrie's telling them the good news, sharing the good news. You know, that's not what she had. Miranda's like, this calls for champagne. Miranda, it's not even 12:30 yet. And she's like, well, what? We have Anthony with us and Carrie's not old. It's time for a toast. Charlotte is like creating an Excel spreadsheet, and Charlotte starts breaking it all down. 2 to 3 weeks of crutches, 6 to 8 weeks of physical therapy, and I'm developing this Excel spreadsheet for us because we're gonna help you. Carrie's biggest concern at the moment is that she's not gonna be able to wear heels for 6 weeks. Biggest concern. Not the anesthesia or anything like that, just the 6 weeks. Then we head on over to Charlotte's apartment. She's on a Zoom call with the rest of the moms from school. Lisa's on the call. They're making trip plans. The Zoom call is getting ready to finish. One of the moms on the call stated Charlotte. Love Rock's performance. Like, Rock really did a great performance at the school play. Charlotte's like, wait a minute, did I miss a kid? Do we have like a new kid that just enrolled, made it onto the school plane? I don't know. Lisa's like, this meeting's over. I'm gonna call you, Charlotte. Immediately calls Charlotte, and she's like, hey, like, I thought you knew. Charlotte's like, knew what? Like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, who's Rock? Lisa's like, no. Like, your daughter Rose is going by Rock now. Like, Rose went to school and told all of her friends and teachers they no longer want to be called Rose. They don't no longer want to be referred to as Rose. They want to be referred to and called Rock. Rock and Harry are in the living room playing like video games. So Charlotte walks in like, hey, like, Rose, like, did you tell your friends and your teachers to call you Rock? And they're like, yeah, well, I did tell you guys. I made 2 TikToks about it. Charlotte's like, you make like 10 TikToks a day. Like, forgive me if I'm a little bit backed up. This is what they want to be referred to as. Charlotte is the one that's a little bit more on the concern side. Like, well, what does this exactly mean in the long run, in the long term? What's the bigger picture here? So the next thing we have Miranda. Miranda's back home and she's opening up her Amazon packages. And one of the packages that she opens up, she ends up getting this book. The book is called Quit Like a Woman, How to Make the Radical Choice to Not Drink in a Culture Obsessed with Drinking. And Miranda's like, wait, what? Like, who sent me this? It's time for Carrie to get surgery. Carrie has on flats, she has on Birkenstocks, of course, and socks. Her and Miranda sit down and they have like a conversation, and it's really about Miranda just telling Carrie like, hey, like, I got this really weird book in the mail. Like, could you believe like Charlotte sent me this? Carrie's like, well, do you know that Charlotte sent it to you? Like, did she? And Miranda's like, well, who else would send me that book? Like, she's been making comments about my drinking. I need her to take like a chill pill. Like, it's really not that serious. Carrie takes this opportunity to like, do you need to quit it? And Miranda's like, no. Next, Carrie is recuperating. She is in bed, she is resting, and Miranda and Charlotte are by her side. Charlotte starts asking Miranda like about her upbringing in childhood and asks her like, hey, like, when you were younger, weren't you like, didn't you go through like a tomboy phase? And Miranda's like, yeah. She was just trying to like start the conversation to get like just like some feedback, advice from Miranda. Carrie wakes up and Carrie's like, I need to go to the bathroom. I don't know if I need to go to the bathroom. Do I need to go to the on the meds? You already know how that goes. So now we have Charlotte helping Carrie into the restroom. So Che ends up calling downstairs. I brought Carrie some dinner. Miranda's like, yeah, come on upstairs. It's me, Rambo. Carrie hears, and so does Charlotte in the bathroom, and they're like, why does she refer her to herself as Rambo? Miranda walks into the restroom and tells Charlotte and Carrie that Che is there. Looks at it like you can already see the whole smile in Miranda's face. face. Carrie's like, listen, now's really not a good time. I'm trying to go to the bathroom. I can't go to the bathroom. You're gonna have to tell them that like now is not a really good time. Carrie is sitting on the toilet. She's like, all meds are working. The meds are definitely working. She can't really feel too much. At one point, she makes a comment to Charlotte that she thinks that it may have been a false alarm. And Charlotte's like, no, honey, you're going. But again, Carrie can't really feel it. Miranda ends up meeting Che in the hospital cafeteria, laughing it up. And Che starts telling the story. When they were growing up, they used to suppress a lot of things and not really be their true, authentic self. And as they got older and they decided to come out, that's when they truly felt like they were being real and living a life of fulfillment. So they're bonding over things. They're just having like a conversation about life. The second conversation that Che and Miranda have about life. So you already know. So now it's time for Carrie to go back home and recover. Anthony and Charlotte dropping her off. He actually uses one of his hot fellas delivery guys to help Carrie up the stairs. Like ask Carrie, like, Carrie, is everything okay? Like, is this okay? As he's pulling her up the stairs and Carrie's like, never better, because of course Carrie's on the medicine. Now Carrie's back home and she's with Charlotte, but it is time for her to get back to work. Streaming from home, working from home. The medication that Carrie's on has her really out of it in a way, and it's helping her be able to be a little bit more free and carefree on the podcast. So she decides to tell the story about when Samantha took out the diaphragm out from inside of her. If you're like 100% sure, definitely drop a comment, but I believe that's like in season 2. So Carrie's having this whole conversation about like boundaries and girlfriends. Those two words don't go together because my girlfriends are always there for me. Out of all the stories for Carrie to tell, Che loves Carrie being on medicine just because they're like, hey, finally, like you're opening up, you're loosening up. Thanks for telling us the story. Charlotte does ask Carrie like, hey, do you think that Samantha's gonna mind about it? Charlotte's like, but you did like name drop her. And then maybe you should like give her like a heads up about it. So next we have Harry and Charlotte. It is time for them to have like a meeting with the school. Harry and Charlotte have some concerns. They're like, wait a minute, like everyone is addressing our child by this name and we, the parents, were not addressed. School is like, listen, we really take the feelings of our kids into consideration, but some kids are really adamant and some kids really do know themselves a little bit better than others. But again, Harry and Charlotte are just kind of feel like, is it a phase? Is it not a phase? And the school ends up suggesting that they do counseling and therapy. Harry and Charlotte really do come to terms with the fact that like, hey, no matter what, this is our child, we're gonna love Rock. Next, we're back at Carrie's old brownstone and Carrie's in bed, she's sleeping, she's recuperating. And of course, since Miranda's taking care of Carrie, who ends up coming over? Che does. So Che ends up coming over. They wanted her to have a good external mic and also decides to bring Carrie some aged tequila. Immediately when I saw the tequila bottle that Che brought for Carrie, I knew they were gonna pop that. Like I just had a feeling. Well, I was right. They end up having shots in Carrie's kitchen. Also end up sparking a joint. She's a smoker, so she ends up sparking up a joint. And they're laughing, they're taking shots. Like, hey, you know, I was kind of thinking that maybe you should give me another shotty. Miranda ends up getting another shotty, and that shotty ends up turning into like a full-blown makeout session. Get ready because this scene kind of took me out. It was cringe, and lately I have been using the word cringe a lot in my vocabulary, and it has been because of this show, because this show does make me cringe a couple times. It really does. Very intense scene. Cynthia Nixon's performance is a lot. She went off. Getting hot in the kitchen. Now Carrie gets up because number 1, Carrie smells the weed. Number 2, she hears them laugh. But then when she starts looking to see who it is, she's like, oh, it's Che. Hey, Miranda hooking up. And she's like, whoa, Carrie really has to go to the bathroom. Watching through the mirror in disbelief, trying to get to the bathroom. She can't walk to the bathroom. She ends up going on an old Snapple bottle. Also wetting the bed. She screams like, oh my God, this is the best feeling I've ever had. And the scene is crazy. It's getting bigger. Yes, it's cringy, but it's entertaining. Tells Miranda, hey, like slide into my DMs. Of course, Miranda's like all happy. Miranda ends up going into the bathroom and she's using the bathroom, and Carrie now decides to say, mind closing the door. And of course, Miranda's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Miranda's like, I'm so sorry, I thought you were sleeping. What has gone into you? What are you doing? What was that? What's going on? You're drunk and you were also going off with my coworkers. I need some answers. She wants to change the sheets and Miranda ends up hurting her, and Carrie's like, listen, you have a drinking problem. Carrie's like, maybe you do have a drinking problem. Like, maybe Charlotte is right. Maybe you do need to look into this. Full-blown breakdown. Miranda's crying. She's pretty hysterical. How she hates her life. She's mad. She doesn't like her marriage. Ends up admitting to Carrie that she has been drinking a lot, but she also ends up opening up to Carrie that she just wants so much more out of life. Next, we have Carrie and she's like lounging, you know, still on her meds, and she decides to text Samantha and tell her like, hey, Sam, I told our story about the diaphragm on the podcast. podcast today. I hope that was okay. And of course, Samantha replies back with like a little joke. Carrie ends up saying like, I miss you. And Sam stops replying. The whole left on red. And Miranda is back at home. And what is she doing? She's making a cocktail. Because of course, why would Miranda be at home making drinks? Like, why not? And she's listening to Che and she's like laughing it up. Cause you know, like they just ended up hooking up. So like she's tuned in. If you remember, Miranda wasn't like listening to Carrie's podcast in the beginning. But now that she's hooking up with Che, she's like all about listening to it now. So Miranda ends up finding this receipt for confirmation that she's the one who purchased the book on how to quit drinking. Like makes her feel like really ashamed is when she has that click through, that breakthrough, like, hey, you know what? Maybe I do have a problem. Like maybe I do need to do something about this. She ends up pouring the drink down the drain and she decides, you know what? I'm not gonna have this drink. It's now time for Carrie to start therapy, so Charlotte helps her get to therapy. They're having this conversation about accepting Brock, and Charlotte is just expressing to her how she feels like Rose is still really young. She has all these questions still, and Carrie's being a good friend, just comforting her. Then Carrie's new physical therapist comes out, and he's this handsome man. And fun fact about this that I just learned off the Instagram, Britney Spears' fiance, Sam Asghari, auditioned for this part, and he ended up sharing his audition tape on Instagram. Carrie meets with her physical therapist. She shares with him that her biggest main concern is getting back into heels. The episode ends with Carrie back in her apartment getting dressed, and she's putting on these beautiful shoes. And she ends the show by saying, and just like that, 3 months later, I was back in heels again. It looks like she's off to an event. This is my favorite look of this episode. Overall, I really did enjoy this episode. I want to know now what Carrie's gonna do to bring more joy and fulfillment into her life. I'm really curious to see how, where, who, what, where. A lot of fans of the original series are really unhappy with the show. The media as well could the writing be a little bit better? Absolutely, there's room for opportunity. People are like, I've given it 5 episodes. No more chances. It's not good. The show is a little bit on the campy side, and I'm enjoying that camp. So a couple of things that I've heard. Number one, I heard that they used elements from the 3rd movie script and made And Just Like That. So I was expecting a couple of seasons of And Just Like That. I don't think that they would just come out with whole series and only give us 1 season. Well, that might actually be the case because the whole drama with the actor who plays Big and all the allegations towards him, apparently that mixed in with the critics' review, people just being unhappy and dissatisfied with the show. Maybe there's not going to be a season 2. We don't know. At the moment, there is no announcement for a season 2. I really want to give this show a chance. I really do. It's entertaining. So excited that you guys are joining me. Thank you. I appreciate you so much. Hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, hit the like button, drop a comment. Let me know how you feel about the show. Do you guys think that the show is going to make it to season 2? Myself included, we really need to stop trying to compare this show to Sex and the City because it is not Sex and the City. It is a continuation. It's a new chapter. And it's not like we have to forget this show, but we just have to like really acknowledge that it is not the same show. We grow, we evolve, we develop. People can call it fake woke. I don't look at it as being quote unquote fake woke. Someone out there is going to relate to these character stories and what they're going through. I have had a lot of different kinds of conversations regarding sex and religion and race, and I've been a part of them. I've had that seat at the table, so I am gonna sit here and say, yeah, a lot of the stuff is realistic. People can think that it's cringy. Yeah, it is. But like I said in my last video, unfortunately, certain topics are gonna make you cringe. That's just how it goes. Okay, so that's just my little take on that. It wants to highlight certain aspects of society now, how society has changed. You know, there were a lot of complaints with the first series. If it still gave that, then people would be complaining that it never evolved. And here's the thing, could it be better done? Yeah, absolutely. There's always room for opportunity. Some people just don't like certain aspects being highlighted on TV that make them uncomfortable, because you know what? Sometimes the truth makes you really uncomfortable, and all this stuff is all for entertainment purposes. End of rant. As always, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you already know what to do.